Welcome to the second part of the Prelude to Rizal's Memorias, part of my Rizal lecture series. And in this video, I titled it Desire and Tandang Selo's Lost Voice. And I hope you're familiar with Tandang Selo from El Filibusterismo. He is primarily the subject of this video's lecture. And now, what was peculiar about the eighth chapter of El Filibusterismo was that Rizal was trying to describe this series of social relations in Philippine society, and then he made it appear as if it is not necessarily a stage, but an object to watch a series of behavior, to understand, to grasp. And Tandang Selo was placed in a position wherein he appears to be the spectator who wants to join, who wants to interact, who wants to do something. That within this network of social relations, Tandang Selo was there, and yet we figured out in the closing part of the 8th chapter that Tandang Selo already lost his voice. He does not understand why, but he somehow can no longer speak. So we will deal with this, and the genius of Rizal in this chapter is something that's never truly been conveyed for the most part. So more or less what we're going to do is to interpret Rizal's 8th chapter in El Filibusterismo, the novel, and try to see what he is getting at. Whether he's conscious of it or not, what he's getting at in this 8th chapter. And we will start with a recap of the previous video about the elementary cell of the graph of desire. And you can forget the graph itself. You can forget some of the elements of that graph and just remember these little ideas that we got from trying to interpret the elementary cell of the graph of desire. First, we are thrown into a world, and this is a world with rules, a world with networks of social relationships that determine meanings. If you remember signifier, we are placed in a system of different individuals, and out of that meaning usually comes. And this is the reason why I said if you want to find meaning in your life, you have to relate to people, you have to connect, build your connections. But somehow in the beginning, we feel lost in this world. We're not really sure if, especially when we were infants and then as small kids, growing kids, we're not really sure what our position is in the social symbolic network. And somehow because of that, we felt like there's something wrong with us. And that feeling led into this onset of a sense of loss. In a way, we become what we referred to last time as the barred subject. So it's a subject with a bar. Remember that, and I hope you can still remember why is there a bar, what the bar means of the subject as containing a pure signifier to represent itself within the social symbolic network. Now, in this video, I will introduce the world, because we said we're thrown into the world, and what precisely is this world composed of? I will introduce to you the world as 3 registers. And think of these registers as 3 rings knotted together. They can never be separated. Just like this figure here, I really do not find, I did not see any picture that would really capture what we mean by three registers, of these three circles knotted together and that they cannot be separated. So the world is composed of three registers. The first register is what we have known to be as the symbolic register. This is the register that I meant whenever I said the symbolic. It's the register of signifiers, the rules of association and our organization of these signifiers, the linguistic rules, our grammar, the way we pattern, we create, or we organize signifiers in order to create meaning, the rules of that, the way in which we imagine the signifiers ourselves, the way we structure them in a system of difference. This is the symbolic register. The imaginary register is literally the same way as what I was talking about last time, that our imagination plays the role of trying to create meaning out of the organization from the symbolic register. Usually the symbolic register is pretty much our culture. The way our culture interprets the world, the way our culture interprets signifiers, arrays of signifiers, signifying chains, or chains of signifiers. The imaginary is usually the one that gives it this imagery, in a sense. That's why it's called imaginary. It has something to do with the imagery that it somehow includes within the associations and the organizations of signifiers. So in a way, the symbolic is linguistic. The imaginary supplements that linguistic structuring with images, with, well, the imaginations and even fantasies. And you can experience the imaginary usually in dreams, because in dreams, if you notice, although there are still elements of our dreams that are somehow influenced by the symbolic register, you do notice that sometimes in our dreams, the structuring, the organization does not function that well. Sometimes you're dreaming that you're in a garden, but then suddenly you fell down from, let's just say, sleeping from a tree. Then you fell down from that tree and ended up on the floor in the living room, a living room which you have no idea where it is, etc. This just images and images of it's not even like necessarily part of experience, but this is the imaginary register is composed of these images, and they are structured by the symbolic register. This intertwining of the symbolic register and the imaginary register is what we actually call reality. In reality, we have here the symbolic register arranging signifiers in a specific order with all the rules and laws. And then we have the imaginary supplementing the symbolic register, but at the same time, the symbolic register arranging the imaginary. So, altogether, this is the reality. And if we consider this circle here as the I think this is the symbolic and this one is the imaginary. This intersection between the symbolic and the imaginary is what we call reality. Just don't mind this these figures first. Just the circle and the shading. We'll deal with these symbols later on. Just the circle. You have two circles and they are, let's just say, intertwined. The intersection here is what you call reality. The next part is the third register, because this is the symbolic and the imaginary, and there is actually a third register. if you see it here, this circle is the third register. And I'm going to explain this one a few moments from now in relation to this symbol, this letter A. So what is the third register? The third register is the real. And there's basically no description of the real except that if it's not part of the imaginary, if it's not part of the symbolic, then it must be real. That's as far as we can describe the real. It's very difficult to imagine, and it's something it's not even difficult, but cannot seem to be expressed in language. And well, you'll imagine it at least to some point later on. The real is the whole in our reality. The real is always the realm behind our horizon. So, let me go back a bit. Now, if this picture symbolizes our reality, the real is this black hole that somehow emerges itself. Remember the elementary cell of the graph of desire. Something made us feel that we lost something. What that lost something is occupies a space in our reality. That space is right now black. There's nothing in it. We don't know what it is. We don't know its composition. All we know is if we want to feel complete, we have to search through reality itself in order to figure out what this missing piece is. So the real is best pictured out this way. In the intersection of the symbolic and the imaginary, the real is that black hole. And that black hole is powerful because it's precisely because of that hole that we feel incomplete, that there's something missing in us. Okay? And the reason why I use this picture here as something that signifies the real is because whenever we look at the horizon, this one, the line, whenever we look at the horizon, it's always dark. It's like, it's almost like the dark hole that I've shown you earlier, that piece of black, kind of a black hole within our reality. And horizons are usually dark. And here's the thing. Whenever we try to go to the horizon, we never really reach the horizon. That's one way of saying that the real is impenetrable. You cannot approach the real. You cannot you can go towards it, but you can never reach it. Okay? Subjectively, the real is a sense of loss. The space left by an object that was taken from us out of our confusion, out of our feeling lost within the social symbolic network. The idea here is somehow we have come to blame the social symbolic network as the very reason why we ended up being confused, and now we have this sense of loss that will never disappear. Now in this picture, what you're actually looking at, the reason why I chose this picture is that if you look at the sun is not just there for the effect, because beyond the realm of our existence, of our reality, so to speak, behind that horizon, something draws us towards it. Something beautiful, just like this picture. Something powerful that exerts its gravitational pull towards, that exerts its gravitational pull, enabling us to have this feeling of wanting to go to the other side. Okay? And this structure, that there is something that lures us towards the real, towards the horizon. Something that captures our attention, makes us feel if I will go to that place, I will find completion. I will find what I'm looking for, the missing object. The object that left its space inside of us now is a black hole inside of us, and we need to figure out what that object was. That object is here represented by the sun. It draws us towards it. We're not sure what it is. We can't explain what it is. And just like what you've said, it's very difficult to explain what exactly do we mean when we said, there's something missing in my life. But you don't know what it is. You cannot imagine it. You can only imagine it in a series of metonymic displacements, for example. You may say it could be object A, object B, object C. Well, you're not really sure. That's why the missing object seems to just emerge everywhere. Sometimes you crave for ice cream. Maybe perhaps that's the object that you're looking for. Sometimes it emerges in a beach, in the sun. Maybe that's what you're looking for. Sometimes it emerges in gold medals. Maybe that's what you're looking for. Maybe you feel like earning awards, having medals, having degrees will complete that incompleteness, will cover that hole so that you will feel complete. That sun is in the realm of the real. And the real calls on us, makes us move, makes us desire. This is the stable framework in which we relate ourselves to this object. And it is precisely in our quest to go after this object, to move towards the horizon. This quest is what we call desire. So in a way, the symbolic and the imaginary helps us shape what could possibly this object is, but it's the real that lures us, makes us go after the object. And once we do, that's how that kickstarts desire. We call this object small a. Now, I don't have to explain it here. I don't think I have the time. I'll probably explain it in class. It's actually complicated to explain it this way. So I'll just say, whenever we refer to the missing object, we call it A, or the object small a. And we call it the object cause of desire, not the object of desire. The object of desire can be a book, can be a degree, can be an ice cream, can be anything that you crave today when you are watching this video. That could be the object of your desire. Why you are desiring such an object, that is the function of the object small a. If you are hungry, you want to eat, what was the example? Last time, I forgot, spaghetti, for example, baked macaroni, something like that. If you are thinking of that, when you're thinking of, or you're craving for something, it's not necessarily just hunger, you're actually desiring something. The object of desire is, of course, say in this example, spaghetti or baked mac. That's the object of desire. The object cause of desire is, what is this thing inside the object of desire that is pulling you towards it? It's like, I said in class that I'm going to avoid to mention love as much as possible. So I will instead here relate it to your crush. If you have a crush on someone, that someone becomes the object of your desire. But what is precisely in that someone? Why him? Why her? What is it that you see in him or in her that pulls you towards him or her? That is the object cause of desire. I hope that's clear. The object small a always promises enjoyment. You always feel that if you can grab hold of the object small a, that you will be fulfilled, that you will be satisfied, that you will be complete again. So sometimes we imagine an external guarantee, especially in the world of the imaginary. Sometimes we imagine, a God of which if we satisfy God, we also satisfy ourselves. To bring enjoyment to God is to bring enjoyment to ourselves. So this is enjoyment, not just something internal, but it's actually something that is out there. We try to bring enjoyment to God by satisfying requirements, and then in the end, once we think that we have given God this enjoyment, then we too will also experience the enjoyment. The other way, say in the symbolic, when I said here, we obey or break the law either for the enjoyment of obedience or of transgression, but honestly, the most and the greatest enjoyment that we feel is somehow when we break the law. Because the law announces two things: the prohibition, and somehow because you are prohibited, you feel like there must be something on the other side of the prohibition. Maybe if we go and cross the law, to transgress the law, then maybe we can experience that enjoyment. This, I think, is a much more suitable example of what this enjoyment is. And we call this enjoyment jouissance. Jouissance is not really complicated. When you see your crush is your object of desire. What is inside your crush is the object cause of desire. What is this X factor? What makes this person your crush in the first place? Why precisely that guy or that girl? But then figuring out the object cause of desire is not just all about figuring out what desire is. It's actually desire, the object small a, actually promises enjoyment. If only I can figure this one out. That's why you need to have a relationship with your crush, if you feel the need to, because it is in that journey in which you will begin to discover what is the enjoyment that your crush has to offer, in a precise way of answering that question. Not just your imagination of probably this is the enjoyment, but to travel through the fantasy itself in order to figure out the enjoyment and to experience the enjoyment. This enjoyment is beyond the pleasure principle. Eating when you're hungry gives you pleasure, satisfies your need. But there's something more. Eating has nothing to do with what you eat. Nutrition is just nutrition. If you're hungry, you feel the need to eat, you eat. You can virtually eat anything that's edible. But have you ever experienced to crave something? That when you are eating, you're not just eating for nutrition's sake, you're eating culture. The imagination of the food that is being served to you, the piece of artistry that is there. And then, of course, the symbolic network that tells you this is the fashion, this is the fad, this is what you should eat, etc., etc. Eating cake may mean to you as, being high class, social. I don't know. Could mean something. You get it from the symbolic. The appearance of the cake, you get it from the imaginary. But why cake? That's the real. Why specifically this kind of cake? That's the real. That's the object small a within the cake. You see something in the cake, you cannot explain what it is. You're just craving for it. That's not instinct. That's not biological. Because biology has no idea how to arrange cakes. How to make them appear very nice. Something like that. So the cake becomes the object of desire. But what is inside that object that makes you crave for it? That's the object cause of desire. That's the object small a. And that by consuming the cake, you hope to be fulfilled, to experience jouissance. The object small a promises enjoyment. This enjoyment we call jouissance. By eating and consuming the cake, we hope that we experience jouissance. But we're not really experiencing it now, do we? Seldom is jouissance experienced. Jouissance is always a promise of enjoyment. And somehow, at some point, we are also experiencing the enjoyment out of that promise itself. The idea is we may not get what we want or we may not get what we desire. But in the process, we might, by attempting to get what we desire, we might just get what we need. And this need is not the same as the pleasure principle. There's a need, we satisfy it. Because jouissance is beyond the pleasure principle. You don't get what it is, but you're promised extreme enjoyment, surplus enjoyment out of something. And usually, we feel this when we see the object small a emanating from another object. As I've said, it could be a degree, it could be a book, it could be a pencil, it could be a perfume, a wig, the size of your boobs, the size of your nose, the shape of your lips, etc. It could be that. But there's no ending here. The object small a gets displaced from one object to another. Have you ever have this people who says it would appear that they have it all, but then there's still something missing? That something missing is the object small a. Now, there is a piece of the a, the object small a. There's a piece of the object small a in the voice, and this is where we're heading towards Tandang Selo's lost voice. There's subjectivity in the voice, and it's always uncanny to hear a voice, especially when no one's around. And the picture I'm showing you here is something that came out in the 1780s in Europe by a guy of the name Wolfgang von Kempelen. I hope I'm not murdering that name. He invented this speaking machine, and the eyewitness accounts of the those who participated in his exhibition, as you see here, we look at each other in silence and had goose flesh or goosebumps produced by horror. There's just something weird about hearing a voice not coming from someone else's mouth or from a person. And it is here that we get into Tandang Selo's lost voice. This is, of course, not Tandang Selo. This is Mladen Dolar, the one who I got this example from of the speaking machine. The voice contains the object small a. And in the novel in that chapter, it would appear that Rizal used the silencing of Selos' voice as the absence of desire. There's always an object small a in our voice, or especially from the perspective of those who listens the voice. However, in Tandang Selo's case, the voice is gone. The object small a is gone. It no longer promises any form of jouissance. Tandang Selo does not understand it either. Sometimes the conventional interpretation is that Tandang Selo has suffered so much in life that he eventually was silenced. But we're not really sure if that was the case, because there are characters in Rizal's novels that also suffered so much, but they did not lose the voice. Here, this is, and again, as I've said, the genius of Rizal. By making Tandang Selo lose his voice, Rizal is saying that Selo, in some sense, despite the social relationships around him, because it's the chapter is ironically titled Merry Christmas, despite of Christmas time and all the relationships going on around him, he's no longer part of that. He's no longer part of the social symbolic network. He no longer has a voice. There's no longer jouissance in him. There's no longer object small a in him. He's no longer something to be desired. In a sense, Tandang Selo suffers in chapter 8 of El Filibusterismo. Tandang Selo suffers a symbolic death. Within the social symbolic network, he is no longer part of it. And this is how Rizal pictures out the idea that it's not precisely your literal death. It's not just your literal death that takes you out of the social symbolic network. In fact, if you are very important within the network, even if you die, your voice is still heard. People will remember you. People will talk about you. They will speculate on what you might probably think given certain circumstances. But here, what we have is something in reverse. Before Tandang Selo even suffers his own literal biological death, he suffers his symbolic death. I'm not sure if this is how Rizal pictures it. Maybe he's doing this one unconsciously. But what does that mean? It means, in the absence of desire, you might as well die. And this is the reason why, I think I mentioned this one repetitively before. This is the reason why we can never really get what we desire. Because as long as we desire, we live. When that desire is lost, that's it. That's symbolic death or literal death. And that's how Tandang Selo lost his voice. It's the absence of the object small a. Sadly, his disappearance in the symbolic network. That's it. This video is a bit longer than usual. But that's it, and see you in the next video.